Hi, all, and welcome to
Tell me an old captain story.
Episode 6 Old Captain and the Narwhalian Knight. One day, Old Captain and his friends, Simon and Miles, were sailing the Arctic Sea looking for adventure when they came upon some narwhals. One of them had gotten its great long horn stuck in an iceberg. A unicorn of the sea, Old Captain said, and jumped down onto the iceberg to investigate. The narwhal was young, a child in narwhal years, and had apparently embedded his horn in the ice. It was just below the surface of the water, so the whale could not reach for air, so it was sure to drown if he did not get free. Quick, give me an axe, Old Captain called to his crew. Simon ran over to help, and Miles brought an axe for Old Captain. We have to hurry. What's wrong? Miles asked. He's stuck under the water, Simon said. If he can't get his blowhole to the surface, he'll drown. Old Captain hacked at the ice near the narwhal's horn. But then the axe handle broke and the head fell into the frigid waters of the Arctic. Simon, quick, Old Captain said. Get me a sword. Simon ran to the ship. Hang on, friend, Old Captain said to the young narwhal. There were other narwhals in the sea swimming around and getting frantic. One of them swam underneath the young narwhal
and seemed to place its body in a way so as to lift the young narwhal so it could get a breath from the surface. Good thinking, Old Captain said. Miles climbed down to the iceberg and brought Old Captain's bag of grabbing over, and reached in to pull out a long plastic tube with a rubber piece on the end. What's that? Old Captain asked as he waited for Simon to return. A snorkel, so he could breathe, Miles replied. Smart. Miles handed Old Captain the giant snorkel, and he placed it in the young narwhal's blowhole, and to his surprise, it fit perfectly. It was very cold, and the water was freezing. Simon returned with Old Captain's sword of arrows, and tossed it to the old cavalier. Once he had it, he unsheathed the blade, and the sword immediately started. What's this? I never saw a creature with a sword for a nose. Can you imagine the buggers? The sword of arrows said to the narwhal. Old Captain stabbed the ice around the narwhal's horn and released a few chunks. He repeated the motion several times to get more ice out. Ow! 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 Come on, what's the big idea? The sword of arrows complained. Oh, be quiet, Old Captain said. After a few more pokes of the ice, the narwhal's horn came free, and the creature backed away from the iceberg. Yay! Simon and Miles cheered, as did the crew of the ship. That's it? Sword of Arrows said. Come on, Swordface, let's go. Old Captain started to sheathe the sword again. Come on, why can't we ever fight anyone? Old Captain sheathed the sword and tossed it to Big Tamble, who took it back to the captain's quarters. The narwhal, now free, came up for air and splashed about as if excited. It squeaked and clicked in its whale language. Old Captain only shrugged, wishing he could understand. Miles had been watching the narwhal and nodded several times. He says thank you, Miles said, and you saved me. I didn't think I would ever get free. You can understand it? Simon asked with a shiver. Yeah, Miles said. Don't you? No, said Old Captain. What's that in your ears? Miles appeared to have two conical-shaped earplugs poking out of his ears. The little wizard took one out and showed it to his brother and Old Captain. Oh, I always carry some seashells with me, and I cast a spell on them, and now if I put these in my ears, I can understand anything any creature from the sea is saying. Here, you guys use some. Miles handed Simon and Old Captain two little conical shells each, and they put them in their ears. Oh, Old Captain looked impressed. Wow, good thinking. I guess we can't use the magic bubbles out here, can we? I think it's too cold, Miles said. They would freeze. Old Captain turned to the narwhal. You are very welcome, he spoke. It was a team effort, friend. Several other narwhals had gathered around, all their formidable horns sticking up out of the water. They were clicking and squeaking, and old Captain, now with seashells sticking out of his ears, understood what they were saying. "You saved the prince," one of the larger narwhals said. "We were happy to be of service," old Captain replied. "The king and queen will want to thank you. You saved their only son. Please come with us so we can repay your kindness." "Well, we can't really refuse a royal visit," Simon said with a smile. "Of course, we will accept your kind gesture." The narwhals nodded approval of the decision. "I have a question, though," old Captain said. "Yes?" "How shall we join you? We are just people. How can we possibly endure the cold water as you do?" The oldest of the narwhals present approached the edge of the iceberg and presented his long horn before old Captain. "Each of you must touch one of our horns. Trust us." Old Captain, Simon, and Miles all shared a look, and then regarded three frighteningly sharp-pointed narwhal horns that were poking out of the water in front of them. Old Captain shrugged and said, "Why not?" and did as he was instructed. Simon and Miles did the same. The three humans felt a sensation like nothing they'd ever felt. A sudden squishiness came over them, and their eyesight went blurry. Then, inexplicably, they could no longer move, and their feet and their arms went out straight from their sides like they were making a T. Unable to stand, they each fell into the water, and to their collective great surprise, they felt immediately better. In the water, each of them was now as comfortable as they had been just moments before on land. They had all become actual narwhals. "Wow!" Simon said, but his word was a squeaky chirp. "This is fun," Miles said. The narwhal prince and his entourage waited patiently while the three human/narwhals got comfortable in their new forms. Then one of them swam up close. "We should go now," said in the closest thing to a narwhal whisper anyone ever heard. "Orcas patrol these waters, and we don't have the numbers to defend ourselves. Come, let's go." None of the new narwhals, old Captain, Simon, or Miles, had narwhal horns. They found it exhilarating to be in their new forms, and each took a deep breath to dive deeper into the ice-cold sea. They followed their host down into the deep, gray gloom of the Arctic. It was amazing how fast they could move in the water, old Captain thought. His every movement was so free he wondered if this was how birds felt when they flew. Before long, they came to what appeared to be a series of small icebergs, like a chain of islands of ice that pierced deep into the water below, creating an effect that reminded old Captain of teeth. Beyond them, he saw a mass of whale activity, narwhals of all ages swimming here and there, but parting when he and his group approached. They had to dive once more to clear the sharp-looking downward spikes of the icebergs, which now seemed deliberately made. Once clear, they came up to a center where there was air, a pocket of sorts that allowed the many narwhals to come up for air while still staying safe in the circle of icebergs. It was a secret place. Old Captain would never have found it if not for his new friends. They each went up for air inside the iceberg circle and drew a deep breath. Above them was a dome of ice with bits of sky peeking through. It was like a throne room inside an iceberg, but without the throne. "So, you're the land crawlers who saved my son," an exceptionally large narwhal said. "I am Nantooth, king of these waters, and I fear there is nothing I can do to thank you all." Nantooth had the longest horn by far, thick as the fat end of a baseball bat at its base, and it must have been 15 feet long. He had scars on his head and a chunk taken out of his tail. A great cluster of barnacles circled the top of his head like a crown. Old Captain spoke, and when he did, it came out in a series of complicated clicks that made up the narwhal language. "We all helped, Your Majesty, and we are always happy to help a fellow traveler in this wonderful world." "Yes, yes," Nantooth said. "My son Nalo and his friends often travel too far, I fear." Old Captain noticed the young prince seemed like he was in trouble and felt bad for him. A procession of sorts approached the king, and with his nod, they dropped mouthfuls of cod, shrimp, and squid on the sea floor nearest old Captain, an offering. "Please," Nantooth said, "eat your fill, for even though you be human, you must eat to maintain your current shape. Our magic has limits." It wasn't long before old Captain's whale stomach growled, and he had to eat. He felt himself teetering between human and narwhal form. He and the boys ate hungrily. And to their surprise, they didn't really taste anything. But when each of them were done, they felt like they could swim for days with their powerful underwater bodies. Just then, a mature-looking narwhal with a tusk half as long as the king's approached. Orcas! The water, filled with squeaks and squeals of the court of narwhals, erupted in worried and frantic speech. What do we do? Simon asked. I don't know, Old Captain said. We don't have any horns, said Miles. It was true. Though they were all males, none of them had the signature narwhal tusk. You are honorary narwhals, the king said. Squires, I cannot knight you just yet. Now please, we must prepare to defend the blessing. The blessing? Old Captain asked. Yes, Simon replied. I read that a group of narwhals is not called a pack or a pod, but a blessing. I wonder why, Old Captain mused. Probably because they're so rare, Miles added. They're like unicorns of the sea. Even you said that. The blessing of narwhals and their newcomers swam close to the iceberg and formed two circles around the king, his son Nalo, and the queen, Nani. The female narwhals were the inner circle, and were there as a second line of defense, where the outer circle was made up of the bigger males and the biggest females who did have tusks, though it was relatively rare that they did. All the narwhals with tusks pointed them outward towards the danger. Old Captain recognized this as a tactically sound defensive strategy. Old Captain, Simon, and Miles were all in the inner circle with the king and his family. Wait a minute, brave Simon said. Why are we in here? No, Nantu said. You are my guests, and as my guests you are afforded the same protection as my family. Simon wasn't happy about that. He became restless. We can help too, Simon protested. I'm not afraid. It is not necessary, said the king. My brave knights will keep you safe. Just then, a great dark mass appeared in the gray gloom of the North Sea. It was huge, far bigger than even Nantooth. Resilience and fear rippled through the ranks in the water. Another shape came, and then another. Orcas, known as the wolves of the sea, always hunted in packs. A brave narwhal with a long tusk swam to meet the lead orca, but a large black shape came from nowhere and crashed into him, sending him reeling. Narwhals gasped in what way that they could. A tuskless narwhal barged through the ring of the others, who stayed in place. It was Simon. That's not fair! Simon squared himself up to the lead orca, and if he had a chin as a narwhal, he would have lifted it in defiance. The orca dwarfed Simon's seaworthy form. He realized how outmatched he was, but he could not abide by a bully. Just then, Old Captain and Miles joined Simon, side by side. The orca bristled then. Who's this pup? That's my brother, Miles said. Sir Simon the Strong, and you'll remember his name. Simon swam even closer, so close that his nose was only an inch away from the feared orca leader. The narwhal who had been hit by the surprise orca attack swam up next to Simon. Then something happened. Narwhals started moving in. Simon, Miles, and Old Captain saw their fearsome tusks appear in their peripheral vision. A line, like soldiers on a battlefield, formed with Simon and his friends at the center. The lead orca blinked. It seemed that suddenly the other orcas were having second thoughts, and indecision spread through their ranks. They were outnumbered, and had not expected the narwhals to stand up to them. Just then, another shape appeared in the gloom. It was Nantooth, the big king with his deadly tusk pointed straight at the orca's eye. Somehow, the king had maneuvered around and got the drop on the killer whale. Not today, Orzad, Nantooth said. Not today. Orzad, the orca, narrowed his eyes as if to scowl, but then he started to retreat, and when he did, the others followed. Moments later, the water was safe again. The narwhals breached for air and collectively breathed sighs of relief. Shortly after, they returned to the icy throne room of the Narwhal King, where Nantooth called his court together again. Will the one called Simon come forward, please? Simon shared a look with Old Captain and Miles before swimming to present himself before the king. You were very brave today, young one, said the king. I hereby name you a Narwhalian knight. You showed us all what courage is today, and we are forever in your debt. Simon blushed, if he could, in his new form. He was feeling eager to get back to being human. Thank you, Your Majesty. I think everyone was brave here today, but I will carry the title with honor. From this day forward, you and your brave friends here are forever welcome in these waters and in my home. Narwhals clicked and squealed with joy, and he touched Simon on each pectoral fin and then once on the head and said, Thou art now a Narwhalian knight, and henceforth you and your friends shall have the power to assume this form when the need arises. Will we get horns? Miles asked. You will have horns, the king said. Old Captain and the boys said their goodbyes to their new narwhal friends and returned to the Whimsy Wayfarer, where they returned to their human forms and were glad to use their hands and feet again to climb the rope ladder to get back on the ship. They all bundled up in warm clothes to combat the cold and sat around drinking hot cocoa and thinking of all that had happened that day. As the ship sailed back toward warmer waters, Simon and Miles looked back to see a few narwhal horns sticking out of the water as their new friends watched them leave. Old Captain raised his mug of hot cocoa and made a toast. To the young knight and the younger wizard. Hooray! The crew cheered. Simon and Miles both had hot chocolate mustaches and big smiles. What you did was very brave, Simon. You stood up to a bully, and that's not easy to do. Simon smiled a little and looked away bashfully. And you, Miles, your wizardry never ceases to amaze me. Huzzah to you both! Huzzah! The crew cheered again. The ship's cook poured fresh cocoa for everyone, and the Whimsy Wayfarer was alive with merriment. The end.
And that's all for now. See you next time on
Simon and Captain story.